A widowed black father let a strange woman spend the night with him, unaware that she was the daughter of a millionaire. "You shouldn't be here alone at this time of night," Thomas Rivera said in a low but firm voice as the March rain beat down mercilessly on Chicago. The young woman turned abruptly, startled, her brown hair clinging to her face, her blue eyes wide with panic. There was something about her demeanor that didn't fit the situation, a natural elegance even in despair, as if she were accustomed to environments very different from this working-class neighborhood. Thomas approached slowly, still wearing his navy blue Northwestern Memorial Hospital electrical technician uniform. The reflective strips glowed faintly in the streetlight, revealing a 42-year-old man with hands calloused from honest work. "I'm not offering charity," he said with calculated calm. "I'm offering temporary safety until you figure out your next step." But there were mysteries in the way she spoke, a refined accent that slipped out occasionally, technical knowledge that revealed higher education, and most of all, why a clearly educated woman was wandering alone in the streets of a neighborhood few of her social class knew. When she mentioned being mugged, Thomas noticed that her hands weren't shaking like someone genuinely in shock, but like someone trying to control a much more complex situation. "My phone, my purse, everything's gone," she whispered, but Thomas noticed something peculiar. Despite claiming to have lost everything, she demonstrated intimate knowledge of the streets of Chicago, mentioning landmarks that only someone familiar with the city would know. Why would a victim of a random mugging know so well a neighborhood she clearly didn't frequent? Thomas hesitated. His paternal instincts warned him of the risks. He had Sophia, his 8-year-old daughter, at home, and he couldn't afford any complications. But there was something about the way she observed every detail around her, as if she were mentally cataloging information, that piqued his professional curiosity. Years of working night shifts at the hospital had honed his perception for unusual situations, and this woman was definitely hiding more than she was letting on. "All right," he said finally, adjusting the strap of his tool bag. "I live 3 blocks from here. It's not fancy, but it's safe and warm." She nodded with genuine relief, but Thomas noticed how her eyes moved strategically, assessing escape routes and landmarks with a precision that suggested training or previous experience. They walked in silence through the deserted streets. Thomas kept a respectful but watchful distance as he discreetly observed her movements, not with the hesitation of someone lost, but with the subtle confidence of someone who was exactly where she planned to be. When they arrived at the modest apartment in a 1940s brick building, she examined the structure with a technical eye that revealed unexpected architectural knowledge. "Take your shoes off there," she said, pointing to a simple rug near the entrance. She obeyed, but Thomas noticed that her feet showed no injuries or blisters typical of someone who had walked long distances after a mugging. The apartment was modest but immaculate. Children's books arranged on the bookshelf, a pink school backpack next to the coffee table, photographs of a smiling girl who was clearly the center of this man's universe. Thomas returned with a thermal blanket, a clean towel, and a dry sweatshirt. "The bathroom is on the right. The water takes a minute to heat up." She took the items with gratitude that seemed genuine, but when their eyes met, Thomas saw something that intrigued him deeply. She wasn't assessing his kindness or hospitality, but rather his technical competence, as if she were conducting a silent interview. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, and for the first time her voice carried real vulnerability. Thomas rubbed the back of his neck, tired after a 12-hour shift. "Because you needed help, and I would expect someone to do the same for my daughter if she were in trouble." Her reaction was unexpected. She flinched as if the word daughter had struck something deep and painful in her personal history. While she was in the bathroom, Thomas made tea and left a thoughtful note. "If you need to call anyone, the landline is in the kitchen. Feel free to grab more blankets. Please keep the volume down. Sophia is a light sleeper." When she emerged 20 minutes later, she found the hot tea in the note, and for the first time since she had arrived, Thomas saw genuine tears in her eyes, not from fear or relief, but from something much more complex, as if she had found something she didn't know she was looking for. At that moment, watching a stranger wrap herself in his oversized sweatshirt and hold a cup of tea as if it were the most precious object in the world, Thomas couldn't have imagined that he had just offered shelter to the heiress of a $200 million empire, nor that this seemingly simple night would set off a series of events that would transform not only their lives, but also the definition they both had of wealth, family, and true purpose. If you're intrigued by this unlikely encounter and want to discover the secrets this mysterious woman carries, keep watching, because this story proves that the most powerful transformations begin with a simple act of kindness between strangers. Sophia woke up to the unusual aroma of gourmet coffee, not the cheap instant stuff her father usually hurriedly prepared before work. In the living room, she found a woman sitting elegantly on the sofa, even though she was wearing borrowed clothes, displaying a posture and mannerisms that contrasted dramatically with the modesty of the surroundings. "Good morning," Sophia said with the natural curiosity of an 8-year-old. "Are you the emergency my dad mentioned?" The simple question made the woman hesitate tellingly, as if she wasn't used to explaining her presence to children, or perhaps because genuine emergencies weren't part of her usual life experience. "I'm Catherine," she replied carefully. "And you must be the brilliant scientist your father keeps mentioning." The way she spoke revealed knowledge of advanced child education and cognitive development that went far beyond casual conversation. When Sophia ran to fetch her science project, Catherine scanned the apartment with an analytical eye, noticing details that only someone with technical training would pick up on: the energy efficiency of the appliances, the systematic organization of the books, the superior quality of the small television that had clearly been a carefully planned purchase. Over breakfast, Thomas watched with fascination as Catherine interacted with Sophia. She not only answered the girl's questions about renewable energy, but expanded on concepts with university-level depth, using sophisticated analogies that revealed a solid technical background. When Sophia asked about the differences between solar and wind energy, Catherine drew precise diagrams that demonstrated engineering knowledge that went far beyond casual interest. "You really understand this," Thomas commented, noticing how she explained advanced physics with professorial ease. "Where did you learn so much about energy systems?" Catherine hesitated, and Thomas realized that every question about her past elicited carefully edited answers. "I studied a little engineering," she said vaguely, but when Sophia asked for help with energy efficiency calculations, Catherine solved complex equations in her head with a speed that suggested not just formal education but extensive professional practice. There were telltale moments that Catherine tried to mask, when she instinctively criticized the inadequate energy infrastructure in the neighborhood, using terminology that only expert consultants would know, or when she casually mentioned the labs at MIT before quickly correcting herself. Thomas began to suspect that he wasn't hosting a typical victim of assault, but someone with a sophisticated technical background who was deliberately hiding her true identity and skills. The most intriguing transformation came when Catherine insisted on helping with electrical repairs in the apartment. Initially hesitant, Thomas was impressed when she demonstrated practical knowledge of residential electrical systems, identifying efficiency issues that he, as a hospital technician, had overlooked. She worked with professional precision, but there was something about her technique that suggested supervision of projects much larger than simple home repairs. "You have real experience with this," Thomas observed as she reconfigured a faulty circuit. "It's not theoretical knowledge." Catherine smiled enigmatically. "I learned by watching renovations." But the way she handled specialized tools and applied commercial electrical codes revealed direct involvement in large-scale engineering projects. When Sophia innocently asked if Catherine worked on big buildings like Dad, the reaction was revealing. Catherine became visibly uncomfortable, quickly changing the subject, but not before Thomas noticed how she unconsciously adjusted her posture to something more authoritative, like someone accustomed to commanding technical teams, not just observing work. During lunch, while preparing simple sandwiches, Catherine made technical remarks about residential system optimization and unnecessary energy waste that revealed familiarity with commercial energy audits. When Thomas asked how she knew about these processes, she explained vaguely about her personal interest in sustainability, but her precise technical language contradicted the casualness she was trying to project. The mystery deepened when the landline rang. Catherine reacted with visible tension, as if avoiding specific contact. When Thomas answered a routine call from the hospital, she listened intently to his technical conversation about energy backup systems, then made practical suggestions about hospital emergency protocols that demonstrated intimate knowledge of complex medical operations. That afternoon, while Sophia was at school, Catherine spontaneously reorganized the apartment's electrical system. Thomas came home to find her emerging from under the kitchen sink, tools in hand and detailed electrical diagrams spread across the table. Diagrams drawn with the precision of a professional engineer, including load calculations that revealed expertise in large-scale commercial projects. "What exactly did you do?" Thomas asked, examining the technical diagrams that looked like the product of expert consulting. "I optimized your power distribution," she replied casually. "Your electricity bill should go down by about 30% next cycle." The accuracy of her estimate and the technical sophistication of the work confirmed to Thomas that he was hosting someone with engineering credentials far beyond what she was admitting. When he pressed her about her actual experience, Catherine finally revealed, "My full name is Catherine Elizabeth Whitmore. The silence that followed was heavy with recognition. Thomas knew that name from hospital contracts. Whitmore Industries controlled energy systems in half of Chicago's hospitals, including Northwestern Memorial, where he worked. In that moment, watching one of Chicago's wealthiest heiresses sitting in his modest kitchen, using his own tools to improve his home infrastructure, Thomas realized he had stumbled upon something far more complex than a simple emergency, and that the coming days would reveal truths about privilege, purpose, and the real meaning of meaningful work. The revelation about Catherine's identity completely transformed the dynamic in the apartment, but not in the way Thomas had expected. Instead of distancing herself or feeling embarrassed, Catherine seemed relieved to finally be able to use her true skills without disguising them. For the first time in her adult life, she was applying her elite education to improve the lives of real people, not to impress investors or increase corporate profit margins. Whitmore Industries, Thomas repeated slowly, processing the implications. You're the daughter of Charles Whitmore who signed $15 million contracts with our hospital? Catherine nodded, but there was something in her expression that suggested those contracts represented only a microscopic fraction of the family empire she was destined to inherit. Over the next few days, Catherine became an unofficial technical consultant for Thomas's apartment. She identified energy inefficiencies that were costing hundreds of dollars annually, redesigned the electrical layout to optimize safety and performance, and even created a basic automation system using components that Thomas could easily maintain with his hospital technician skills. But there were disturbing signs that Catherine tried to ignore. Her cell phone, which she claimed to have lost in the robbery, rang constantly from a blocked number. Messages arrived on Thomas's landline asking Catherine Whitmore to contact the family office urgently. She deleted everything systematically, but Thomas noticed how her hands trembled every time she heard these messages. "They're looking for you," Thomas observed one morning after the third consecutive call. "Your family is worried." Catherine laughed bitterly. "They're not worried about me. They're worried about an $800 million business merger that depends on my attending an engagement dinner next week." The truth began to emerge in painful fragments. Catherine had fled 2 days earlier from an event where her parents planned to officially announce her engagement to Harrison Montgomery Jr., heir to a rival energy conglomerate. The union was not only romantic but strategic. It would combine two of the largest energy fortunes in the United States, creating a monopoly that would dominate the Midwest market for decades. "You don't even know this man?" Sophia asked with the relentless logic of a child when she heard the story. "How can you get married if you don't know each other?" Catherine patiently explained about family arrangements and socio-economic compatibility, but Sophia frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Daddy always says you should only marry someone who makes you laugh and takes care of you when you're sick." Thomas watched Catherine struggle with concepts that Sophia accepted as fundamental. For a child raised with genuine love, the idea of marriage based on financial spreadsheets was incomprehensible. For Catherine, raised in a world where relationships were strategic transactions, Thomas's unconditional love for Sophia represented something almost mythological. The family dynamic Catherine observed daily contrasted dramatically with her own experience. Thomas worked double shifts, but always found the energy to help Sophia with school projects. He cooked balanced meals on a limited budget, created free educational adventures on weekends, and most importantly, treated Sophia as an intellectual partner, not a decorative accessory or future investment. "How did you learn to be a father?" Catherine asked one night, watching Thomas patiently explain fractions using pieces of pizza. Thomas smiled sadly. "My wife Anna taught me a lot before she died. But mostly I learned that love is consistent presence, not grand gestures or expensive gifts." Catherine began to understand that she had missed something fundamental during her privileged upbringing. Her parents had provided elite tutors, international educational trips, and access to the best universities, but they had never been genuinely present for simple conversations about fears, dreams, or daily discoveries. Thomas, with limited resources, offered Sophia something that money couldn't buy: complete attention and unconditional love. When Sophia developed a fever during Catherine's second week, Thomas immediately canceled an extra shift at the hospital, sacrificing much-needed income to personally care for his daughter. Catherine was impressed watching him monitor her temperature, administer medication, and most importantly, turn a sick day into an opportunity for reading and quiet games. "Did your parents do that when you were sick?" Sophia asked Catherine innocently. The painful answer was that Catherine rarely saw her parents when she was sick. Private nurses and family doctors handled health issues, while Charles and Elizabeth Whitmore kept their corporate schedules unchanged. This revelation crystallized for Catherine the fundamental difference between material wealth and emotional wealth. Thomas offered Sophia basic financial security but an abundance of time, attention, and affection. Catherine had grown up with material abundance but chronic emotional poverty, where every relationship was evaluated for its potential financial return or social advancement. In the third week, Catherine made a decision that shocked Thomas. She called Harrison Montgomery Jr. and called off the engagement for good. "I can't marry someone when I've discovered what I really want in a relationship," she explained. Thomas understood that something had changed irreversibly. Catherine wasn't just running away from an arranged marriage, but actively choosing a different kind of life. That evening, as they prepared dinner together and Sophia did her homework at the kitchen table, Catherine realized she had found something her elite education had never mentioned: a functional family where honest work, emotional presence, and genuine love created real wealth, measured not in dollars but in meaningful moments shared every day. The fragile peace Catherine had found crumbled one Thursday morning when a black limousine pulled up in front of the apartment building. Catherine froze as she watched two private security guards emerge from the vehicle, followed by the imposing figure of Charles Whitmore III, a man whose presence radiated corporate authority and generational wealth in an almost physical way. "Sophia, go to your room immediately and lock the door," Catherine said with an urgency that made the girl obey without question. Thomas, who had arrived early from the hospital, appeared in the living room just as authoritative knocks echoed through the wooden door. "Catherine Elizabeth Whitmore," Charles's voice cut through the air like a judicial blade. "You have 30 seconds to open this door, or my lawyers will obtain a search warrant." Thomas looked at Catherine, seeing genuine terror in her eyes for the first time since he had met her. "He's not bluffing," she whispered. "My father owns half the judges in Chicago." The door swung open, revealing Charles Whitmore in all his calculated intimidation: a $3,000 suit, a presence that filled spaces like an impending storm, and eyes that assessed everything in terms of financial assets. His eyes swept the modest apartment with barely concealed disgust before landing on Thomas with a disdain that revealed decades of socio-economic supremacy. "You're the man who kidnapped my daughter," he said, not as a question but as a legal accusation laden with criminal implications. Thomas remained calm, years of working in hospital emergencies having prepared him for high-pressure situations. "I'm the man who offered shelter when your daughter needed safety." Charles surveyed the apartment like a criminal investigator. "This establishment is dramatically below the standard of living appropriate for a Whitmore. Catherine has responsibilities, fiduciary obligations that you clearly don't understand." He gestured dismissively. "She's heir to $200 million and has legal commitments to Montgomery Industries." "She is an adult and capable of making her own decisions," Thomas replied, positioning himself protectively close to Catherine. But Charles laughed cruelly, revealing decades of controlling people through financial pressure. "Decisions? She is having a temporary psychotic episode. My private doctors have already diagnosed acute stress requiring immediate hospitalization." Catherine found her voice, but it trembled visibly. "Father, you can't force me." "I can and I will," he cut her off brutally. "You have an engagement to fulfill with Harrison Montgomery on Monday. $800 million contracts depend on this union. Your little slumming adventure ends now." Thomas felt as if he had been physically punched. "Engagement?" Catherine looked at him with tears streaming down her face. "I was going to explain. It's an arrangement I never willingly accepted." But Charles smiled with sadistic satisfaction. "Accept it now or accept it after court proceedings that will destroy anyone associated with this charade." The threat was clear and specific. Charles had the resources to ruin Thomas's career, harm Sophia's education, and turn their lives into a legal nightmare that would last for years. "My investigators have already documented multiple housing code violations in this building," he continued methodically. "Social services could question the suitability of the environment for a minor." Catherine understood that resisting would mean destroying the people she loved. Thomas saw the exact moment when she made the decision that would break their hearts. "I'm coming with you," she said abruptly. "But not because I'm afraid of your threats. I'm coming because I can't drag Thomas and Sophia into a war they didn't choose." "Finally showing some proper family responsibility," Charles muttered triumphantly, revealing years of planning this moment. But Catherine turned to Thomas one last time, and her words carried the weight of a permanent farewell. "Thank you for showing me what it's like to live authentically." For 3 weeks, I experienced what it means to be valued for who I am, not what I represent financially. She knelt to hug Sophia, who had come out of her room when she heard raised voices. Keep studying science, she whispered. One day you'll change the world, and when you do, remember that intelligence and kindness are more powerful than money. Sophia held her face in her little hands. Why are you crying? You'll be back tomorrow, right? Catherine couldn't answer. Charles gestured impatiently to his security guards. Enough emotional theater. Catherine, in the car. Now. She rose slowly, each movement seeming to physically tear her from her newly discovered soul. Catherine, Thomas said as she reached the door. She turned. You don't have to do this. There are other options, but Charles cut him off brutally. There are no options. There is family obedience or devastating consequences for everyone involved. Catherine got into the limousine without looking back, knowing that if she did, she would lose the courage to protect the people she had learned to genuinely love. The sound of the door closing echoed like a final court sentence. Thomas stood on the porch watching the vehicle disappear into the streets of Chicago, holding Sophia, who was crying without fully understanding what had happened. Daddy, why did the bad man take Catherine? Will she be back tomorrow? Thomas couldn't answer, because he knew he had just lost not only an extraordinary woman, but the first person since Anna who had made his home feel complete again. Inside the limousine, Catherine looked out the back window at the apartment building where she had discovered that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts, but with relationships that transform people into better versions of themselves. 2 months after Catherine was forced to leave Chicago, Thomas received a call that would change everything. Dr. Patricia Nguyen, Director of Biomedical Engineering at Northwestern Memorial, requested an urgent meeting. Mr. Rivera, we have received an extraordinary proposal that specifically mentions your technical qualifications. In the director's office, Thomas discovered that Catherine had submitted a detailed energy optimization plan for all hospitals in the Whitmore Industries network, a $40 million project that required specialized technical oversight. The document included a thorough analysis of Thomas's work, recommending him as the lead consultant due to his unique understanding of critical hospital systems and proven ability to implement efficient solutions with limited resources. She specifically documented your innovations in the ICU backup systems, Dr. Nguyen explained, showing technical reports Catherine had secretly prepared during her weeks in the apartment. Her unauthorized modifications saved the hospital tens of thousands in annual energy costs. Thomas realized that Catherine had been observing and evaluating his work from day one, not as criticism, but as professional recognition. She had turned his improvised improvements into formal documentation that established his technical expertise to corporate executives who would normally ignore maintenance technicians. The position offers a salary of $120,000 a year, plus project supervision that could establish you as an independent consultant, Dr. Nguyen continued. But there is one unusual condition. The contractor insists that the project include an educational program for hospital employees' families, with a specific focus on science education for children. Thomas immediately understood that Catherine had created an opportunity that would benefit not only his career, but also Sophia's education. The program would give his daughter access to advanced laboratories, scientific mentoring, and most importantly, fulfill Catherine's promise to Sophia that she would change the world through science. 6 months later, Thomas was overseeing the implementation of energy systems in 5 metropolitan hospitals, while Sophia was participating in an advanced science program that put her years ahead of her peers. Their home had been transformed with financial stability that allowed them to focus on personal growth rather than daily survival. But there were signs that Catherine was facing her own battles. Business articles mentioned internal tensions in the Whitmore family and indefinite postponements of a planned merger with Montgomery Industries. Through hospital contacts, Thomas learned that Catherine had taken direct control of the family business's technical operations, implementing ethical standards that conflicted with traditional profit maximization practices. She's fighting, Thomas explained to Sophia one evening when the girl asked about Catherine. Sometimes brave people have to change entire systems from the inside out, and that's very difficult when everyone around you resists change. The turning point came one December afternoon when Catherine showed up at the lab where Sophia was building a wind turbine for the science fair. "Hello, little engineer," she said softly. Sophia squealed with delight and ran into her arms. "Catherine, you're back. Daddy said you were fighting corporate villains." Catherine laughed through her tears. "Something like that. But I've discovered that the best way to fight is to build better alternatives." She looked at Thomas, who had appeared upon hearing the commotion. Thomas, I've cut all financial ties with my family. I'm using my inheritance to establish an independent sustainable energy institute. And that means? Thomas asked carefully. It means I'm no longer the Whitmore heir. I'm Catherine Rivera Whitmore, if you'll have me. She hesitated. I want to marry you. Not out of convenience or a family arrangement, but because you taught me that true family is built through a daily choice to love and support one another. Sophia interrupted before Thomas could respond. Does that mean Catherine will be my real mom? And we can do science experiments together every day. When both adults laughed and nodded, Sophia announced, best day of my life. A year later, the Rivera Whitmore Institute for Sustainable Energy was operating in 12 cities, providing free technical consulting to hospitals and schools in underserved communities. Catherine had discovered that applying her privileged education to solve real problems brought her satisfaction that material luxury never could. You know what's most amazing? Catherine said to Thomas as they watched Sophia explain engineering principles to a group of visiting children. She doesn't even realize she's changing the world. For her, sharing knowledge is just natural fun. Thomas hugged her. Like her mother. Catherine gently corrected him, our daughter. Sophia has taught me that family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about love that grows through consistent presence and unconditional support. That night, as Sophia slept between them during a movie about female inventors, Catherine whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in relationships that make us better people." Thomas kissed her forehead. "Thank you for showing me that genuine love transcends class differences when it comes from the heart."